If you just clicked this video because you think learning history is boring, or if you have the imagination that something might be influencing or controlling the world wars that occurred in history, you're in the right place. In this video we will dig into the modern history in a whole new way that you never learned at school. If you're new to this channel, I make book summaries from great Japanese books, so if you're interested in learning wisdom that might change your life, please consider subscribing. Okay, to get straight to the point, when we talk about the history after the Industrial Revolution, there is only one important and simple structure you need to know. And when you understand this, the history you've learned at school will dramatically change to an exciting one. Here it is. Two forces are infighting within the establishment. It's the capital versus the empire. The capital or the capitalists are the force that are interested in one thing, money. They focus on earning more money, gaining more profit, and increasing their capitals. They live without borders. Typical examples are the Jewish Rothschild or Rockefeller family that has a supranational network. They enjoy and seek for a multipolar system. Yes, multipolar is an important keyword to describe the capital essence. They seek for a balance of power in the world to expand the market and make more money. The second force is the empire or the nation. These guys focus on developing their own country and try to eliminate any threat. The important keyword here is hegemony. They need military force to defend their nation, and the military-industrial complex is always beside them, which naturally strives them to war. The British, America, and Israel are historically categorized here. Again, these two forces are constantly infighting inside the establishment. Keep this in mind and let's dive into the storytelling history. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain in the late 18th century. The era known as Pax Britannica, which the British Empire became the first hegemonic power in mankind history. Here the two forces in the establishment, the capital and the empire, were both enjoying their prosperity. The British Empire was able to keep order by diplomatic power and the strongest secret intelligence service MI6, which is famous in the 007 movies. The British hegemony continued between 1815 to 1914. They indirectly ruled by keeping the military capability equal in the European states, and on the other hand, colonized the non-European world with their strong sea power. This strategy was called the small balance of power. But when the Industrial Revolution spread through Europe and nations like Germany started to gain power, the British Empire started to decline, and the first infight between the capital and empire began. The capital were no longer interested in the declining Great Britain. They wanted the Industrial Revolution and also the French Revolution to spread around the world and create nations that have middle-class citizens. They no longer wanted the British small balance of power, but for the countries under colonial domination to be independent and create a large balance of power. For what? To invest money. But the empire never wants other nations to become a powerful rival. And in order to defend their hegemony, the British Empire tagged up with France and Russia to crush the rising power Germany. So World War I began from 1914 to 1918. During the World War I, the Russian Revolution occurred in 1917. Here the capital, the Jewish American capitalists that were against Great Britain like Jacob Schiff financially supported the Russian Revolution. Why? To make Russia, the Soviet Union, withdraw from the war and the Great Britain to lose. The co-leader, Trotsky, who was exiled in New York, was also supported by the capitalists there. The New York capitalists are said to be the wire puller of Russian Revolution. The concept of socialism in that era was so powerful and a huge threat to the Great Britain Empire. Lenin, the leader of Russian Revolution, advocated self-determination of nations and built the Soviet government on top of 12 republics. The Russian Revolution not only changed the Russian Empire to Soviet Union, but socialist parties expanded around the world like in China, India, Iran, and Africa by the support of Soviet. These countries had the potential to be independent from the British colony and join the Soviet Union. The Third International, which was an organization to advocate communism to the world, was founded in 1919. Communism is the ultimate form of socialism and was a world movement. The word hegemony means to rule and influence other nations without using military forces. The Great Britain had their hegemonic power during Pax Britannica, and the Soviet emerged as a big threat. But Lenin died in 1924 and Stalin took control. Stalin focused on strengthening Soviet Union internally and not to expand socialism globally. And so Trotsky, who had the backup from the capitalists was exiled from the Soviet Union. Coming back to the story of the World War I, Great Britain was able to win with the help of America. America expected to be handed over the hegemony from Great Britain. There were two divided forces as well in America's establishment. One was the empire, those who followed the Great Britain's rule of order and wanted to become one of the major powers. Second is the capital, to break this British hegemonic system and create a large balance of power in the world. The League of Nations was founded in 1920 based on Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, but Great Britain took the lead in the discussion and wisely talked in the rest of European nations in favor of Great Britain. Wilson was disappointed and intentionally guided the American Congress not to join the League of Nations. So in this sense, the empire won the first battle between the capital and the empire. The second battle was the World War II. Hitler's Germany was crushing the entire Europe, merged Austria in 1938, invaded Poland in 1939, then in 1940, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, and France. Hitler was close to conquering what even Napoleon couldn't accomplish. Great Britain was getting weak, and it was just a matter of time when Germany will start the invasion. America was keeping silence because they were waiting for the best timing until the British will be fully beaten up. This was because they wanted to avoid following the same footsteps as when they were deceived by Great Britain after World War I. America finally agreed with Great Britain in the Atlantic Charter in 1941 to transfer the hegemony and enter the World War II. What were the capital doing? The capitalists were trying to build the multipolar world, which was later reflected in the United Nations and Security Council. How? By trying to make Soviet Union join the alliance along with US and British. They promised the Soviet Union to be allowed to influence East Europe and be one of the 5 major permanent members of the United Nations, to keep the balance and build a multipolar world so that the economy could develop in the world. The headquarters of the United Nations was located in New York, which was donated by Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest capitalists in history. After World War II, most of the colonies gained independence, and this was in line with the capitalist storyline. But the British and America's military-industrial complex instigated the world by using mass media to create the Cold War. The Cold War divided the world into 2 blocks, the good guys and the bad guys. This was what the empire always wants, and the 5 major permanent members, China, France, Soviet Union, UK, and America, became nominal because of the Cold War. Why can this happen? America exists in a different continent of Eurasia. It will be geographically natural to think that America should leave it up to the Russia, Europe, and China for things going on in the Eurasia continent. But this never happened in history. During the Cold War, communism was thought dangerous from ideological point of view, and there was always the propaganda of anti-Soviet Union or anti-China. But even after the Cold War, the anti-Russia and anti-China strategy always exists, especially for the military industry and right wings. Why is that? If Russia or Soviet Union were to build a cooperative hegemonic system with America, Russia's influence in Europe will rise, and guess what? The power of Great Britain will relatively fall. Anti-Russia is always Great Britain's national strategy and deeply connected to their national interests. And this strategy is used to team with the military industry and mass media to build up a propaganda. The third battle between the capital and empire started in the 1960s. John F. Kennedy tried to end the Cold War with Soviet Union but was assassinated by the military industry. So the capital changed their strategy because they know that the military industry is better at controlling the mass media. They needed to hop on the strategy of the empires and extremely overdo it so that the empire self-destructs. It's a little complicated strategy, but the capital needed to camouflage themselves as the empire in order not to get hit by the mass media. For example, during the Vietnam War, they led the war to continue to an extreme and ended up with financial catastrophe. Now you might think, why would the capital want to crush the economy? Well, the Cold War is made by the empire to flourish the military industry and divide the world into 2 forces. For America to build an enemy like China, Russia, India might limit their economic development. But for the capital, this would simply limit their global market and consumers. For the capital, they're not interested in America's growth. They're thinking in the long run, like 100 years ahead, how to make more money. A world with only half the market doesn't make any sense for them, and therefore they don't mind having a temporary financial catastrophe to build up a whole new system. Sorry, we were talking about the third battle, right? In the 1970s, Richard Nixon tagged up with Henry Kissinger, who has been an associate of Rockefeller, and accelerated the multipolarity. The Nixon shock in 1971, the cancellation of direct international convertibility of dollar and gold, made the US dollar drop against other currencies. Nixon also normalized diplomatic relations with China in 1972. But this pushed the button for the empire, and in 1974, Nixon was caught by the Watergate scandal and resigned president. Remember that the military industry has far more influence on the mass media. And from the 1970s onwards, the Israel Zionists living in the US expanded their influence in the political world. They learned the know-how well from the British on controlling the mass media and how to brainwash the people by turning everything into the story of good guys and bad guys. From then onwards, in the American politic world, the empire, the military industry, and Israel dominated. Until finally, Ronald Reagan ended the Cold War. Reagan at first had to pretend that he is on the empire's side and escalated the Cold War not to fall on scandals. He proposed to the British to execute financial liberalization and gain money in the financial markets so that they agree ending the Cold War. Towards Israel, he tried to progress peace with PLO, Palestine Liberalization Organization, which later on led on the Oslo Accords in 1993. Here, the third battle between the capital and the empire, the capital won. After the Cold War, the British and American led the world with financial globalization. The world became a free market. Globalization happens when the capital is in the lead. And when the empire is in the lead, the world splits into enemies and allies. The fourth battle started in the late 1990s. The empire strikes back this time by labeling the Muslims to be terrorists and build up a new war, the war against terrorism. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis occurred and the financial hegemony started to fall. But here the capital used the same tactics, overdoing and self-destruction. After 9/11, Bush Jr. and the neoconservatives, neocon, started Iraq War in 2003. It said that they were on Israel's side along with the military industry to invade Iraq, but not so fast. This strategy is similar to Reagan, pretending to be on the empire side and doing it to an extreme until it's a mess and becomes a failure. Actually, after the self-destruction, America fell into financial difficulty. Multipolar accelerated, US dollar collapsed, and multiple key currency arose. The capital doesn't really care whether the currency that the country they're living in collapsed. The huge capitalists in New York come from all the way back in 16th to 17th century from Amsterdam and moved to London, and in the 19th century moved to New York. They just move along with the hegemony and made massive amount of money with the Jewish global network. Just because they lived in America for 100 years doesn't necessarily mean they are loyal citizens. But when we talk about the Jewish network, they are not only the capitalists. They are also in secret intelligence agencies and in mass medias. Way back in the French Revolution, they were the ones who made the people believe in the concept of nation and nationalism to provoke revolutions. They are on the empire side. In this sense, capital and empire is an infighting between the people who live inside the Jewish network. The enemy of Jewish is Jewish. Okay, thank you for watching. Don't you just love finding out the mechanism of what might be going on in the world? Question of the day. Which side do you think Donald Trump is on? The capital or the empire? Please post your answers in the comment field and maybe I'll make a video on that. I believe there's no single justice or true history in the world. The history we learn in each country is just a bunch of facts that are discovered but chosen carefully by the policy makers and establishments. I think it's important to look from the outside and find out the structure of what's going on in the world and not believing in only one side of the story without questioning it. If you like this video, please do me a favor and click the like button, and if you're interested in learning great wisdom from Japanese books just like this one, please hit the subscribe button on the bottom right corner. This video was a partial book summary from a Japanese journalist written by Sakai Tanaka. The title is Financial World War. The Third World War has begun. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye bye.